go here. All right, so what I have for you guys is a couple of different examples of oil pastel drawings that I started. With each class, I've done a different drawing that I've started because I think it's helpful to just see the whole process evolve. So last week when we looked at your drawings, we talked kind of what would make the best one for oil pastel. So I'm going to do this drawing right here. You can see I just have a calendar because I have nice photos. Because it's just got nice, really smooth, blendy colors. There's lights, there's darks. It just is a good use for this material. So I'm going to kind of leave this picture so you can at least see part of it while I'm working. And right now you're just watching. In about 5 minutes, I'm going to have you guys start with the oil pastels. But I find it helpful to just watch for a minute and kind of get a feel for the tool. Oil pastels are really forgiving, which is one of the reasons that I like them so much and I love teaching them. They're also really like juicy is the word that I like to think of. They just blend and smear and they're really cool. Now I am sketching some of my key lines that I need to help guide my blending in oil pastel to help you guys see them a little bit better. You can draw them in pencil. It's a lot less pressure because pencil erases and oil pastel doesn't. You'll be able to kind of coat over it, but it won't be exactly the same. So all I did was I got some of that key information on there so that I can kind of guide my shapes. I'm going to put a little bit of information on the shapes of my clouds because it just helps me to have some of those outlined in there loosely so that when I'm sketching I can focus on my blending and my colors. Okay, now I will show you a technique towards the end before I set you guys loose that will show you how to transfer from your drawing. So if you have a really nice sketch and you don't want to have to redraw it, I can show you how to get it on the black paper with the supplies that you have right there in front of you. We are working on the black because it makes really rich colors, but sometimes if you want your colors to stay pretty intensely bright, you will want to start with white versus just using, like if you see the purple on here versus the purple with white underneath it, they do look a little bit different. What we're really focusing on is working as an artist. So if our goal was to perfectly remake this image, you know, in oil pastel, that's fine. Some artists do that and they make hyper realistic artworks, but I actually am interested in how you kind of see the colors, how you interpret them, and turning that into your own work of art. So our photographs are there for inspiration to help us draw better, blend better, but it's not the artwork. You're making the artwork.
I think it's important too, from what I've seen from the 8th grade, and I totally agree with Ms. Zill. Sometimes we draw what we think is there and not really what is there. Some of the 8th graders were making perfectly straight lines and perfectly even floor, you know, bottom, ground, and sky. Whereas if you look at Ms. Zill's shapes, they're a little bit irregular. She's actually looking at the shape that's there. She's not making up the shape, because sometimes that gets sort of just sort of boring and flat. You want to actually look at proportions, angles. It's a little like math, slope and slant.
Yeah, in our brain, like we have this vision in our head of how something we feel it should look.
Right, exactly.
And sometimes your brain overpowers your eyes.
And here she's working a little bit warm and cool. You can see the warm oranges and yellows and whites with the cool blues and violets, and it's starting to glow. So you're sort of just being instinctive, like maybe you like to cook and you're adding a little salt and you're adding a little pepper or a little bit of hot sauce or sugar. It's almost the same way you're using the oil crayons. You're looking to see, does it need to be lighter? Does it need to be darker, cooler, warmer? A lot of times when you juxtapose, put warm colors and cool colors together, next to each other, it makes them sort of pop. And Missile just added this big thing of white because you can see in her photograph, it's very, very light there. So you're sort of abstracting it a little bit and going the darks and the lights together.
And the oil pastels that we gave you, you have the 12 basic colors that the sets kind of came with. But with oil pastels, what's kind of cool about them, if you buy a set, is they come in about like 150 different colors. I mean, like they're really fun to kind of get more colors. So if
You
you
know, sorry, I know Miss Il found some on Amazon for like, I found even like there was a 50 color set for like $15. So you can, if you feel like splurging, you can really have a lot of beautiful colors.
and if you find like, oh, I'm doing this thing and I need a couple different shades of blue because I can't quite make the right blue with the colors that I have, you can also stop by the art room and we can give you some extra colors because we do have some bigger color sets. We just don't have a limitless budget to send everyone with 60 color sets home. But if it's something you find that you're really like into and you're really loving, then I would definitely recommend. This would be one that I would. You can go to Michael's too if you don't want to Amazon.
Yeah. And oil crayons, art supplies are so expensive, but oil crayons are one of the cheapest ways to get lots of colors. They're pretty inexpensive.
And so what happens though is you have to let the artwork evolve slowly. It's not going to happen instantly. You're going to change your direction based on what you're drawing. Sometimes you have to go back over things. Sometimes you have to use the oil pastel and a little bit of scratch paper to kind of get the tip pointy enough to kind of make, like, if there's a really crisp line, like I'm working on this horizon line here and I want this blue to stand out from the sky. So it went back and forth over it a bunch of times to get it like a nice crisp line so that it would stand out differently from the sky. And then it's very black in here. So it seems silly, but even if you have black, you're going to actually put in oil pastel. And these are little trees, but I'm not actually drawing specific little trees. I'm just creating that texture, and the trees go up and down. So I'm using the oil pastel right now up and down. And I'm going to get this base layer, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to add some little highlights and things. So oil pastel, you have to be patient with it. Like you start with some color lightly and you build up and you build up and you layer over, and you're kind of patient to let it evolve. And you don't panic if you get something you don't like because you can add more color on top of it. You can scrape it off. Sometimes I use my fingernail. Um, I don't know. I'm sure you could find different things around your house that would make perfect little scrapers if you don't like to make your fingernails dirty. Personally, my fingernails are always dirty.
I do.
And then this edge here where the water starts again is really crisp. So again, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to try to make sure that edge is really crisp so it stands out. And sometimes I leave a little bit of paper showing there to separate them. Here I got a little too close to my other colors.
And you can see, why does it look like it's going back in space? Because the land on the left edge is fatter. As it goes back in space, it gets thinner. So all those angles are really important, as well as the way you color. It's almost a combination of your shapes and the coloring.
Um, Questions so far? I could sit here and do this for hours.
Raise your hand. I'm looking while Ms. Dill's doing lovely artwork. Anybody want to raise their hand and a question or want to, something clarified?
The biggest thing that I saw with students that I was looking at their artwork was that they forgot to change directions based on their shape. Like this mist, I don't know if it's looks like it's maybe a geyser going up. This is from Yellowstone, so I'm thinking I can infer that I think that's what it is. Um, and so I definitely don't want to be horizontal because it's like this mist coming up. So I need to make sure I use the oil pastel, and I want it to be kind of round and flowy. So I'm not going to use straight marks.
Yeah, I think that's important, Miss Sill. And you can use the side of it even. If you don't want it to be too strong and linear, liney, you can add the side of the oil pastel to make it more fuzzy.
Like this one broke, and I've been actually liking it. You could break off a little piece of the oil pastel. We're not going to come after you because you returned a oil pastel nub. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple other ones that I did just to give you a little bit. I just don't want to stop. All right, sorry. Um, as I was talking about, it's your artist interpretation. This was a student I was
How do you
helping them
blend it?
with a watercolor or waterfall. And you can see all the different colors I put in there. And blending is really happening by layering the colors on top of each other. That was a great question. So I'm taking, on this guy, I'm using my oil pastel in the shape that I want it. Like I want it to look like this waterfall is falling down, but I'm going back and forth, and I would put some of the darks and then I would come back on top with the lights. And it's kind of a back and forth process. You don't want it to be stripy. Like if I was working in this sky right here, it kind of starts to turn blue in this next section. I would put down a little bit of white just because the sky is really bright up here. And so I'd put down a little bit of white, and then I would bring a little bit of blue down on top of the white. And then I would start to put a little bit of purple. And so I'm kind of going back and forth. It's not like a perfect, you put one down and then you move on. You're kind of like layering back and forth till you get a smooth transition.
Yeah, not like a coloring book where you stay in shape so much. It's like one sort of melts into the other. Miss O, go back to the waterfall when you're done with that one too.
Sorry. Yep.
Please, no. Like white isn't all white. Sometimes, like I'm an art fair junkie, and they'll paint a white flower. But some places the white's very bright, and there's a teeny bit of yellow because yellow's a warm color and it makes it glow. Sometimes you want shadows. On Miss Ill's waterfall on the left, that blue looks awesome, and the blue makes it sort of recede and go back. She didn't make the waterfall all straight. Some of the kids in the 8th grade when I was helping, the waterfall was perfectly straight. Here she has a curving at the top and sort of foaming at the bottom. So you can play a little bit with warm, cool colors and also with the direction of your blending to give the feeling of whatever you're drawing.
So make sure you're not just ignoring that original photo that you looked up. You definitely want to have it accessible to where you're working from. It'll give you really good tips on blending. This one was a canyon, and I was helping. This is the sky that you saw between, and then this rock formation was close to us and it came over the top. But the direction of the stone had this very horizontal feel, and then it curved around, whereas the stone in the back had this very vertical feel. And I didn't spend a ton of time on this. I was just helping to show, like, creating these different pockets of different color to show the sides of the different formations and things.
And Miss Zill left a little bit of black of the paper showing next to the edge of the blue. And to me, that looks really good because it gives a feeling of depth where the thing is. So you can let the paper be part of your design too.
Yeah, and I did the same thing here. I did a little bit of black here so that that rock formation kind of really stuck out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go. All right, some of you did a really nice job on your sketch for your landscape, and we're having trouble getting it in oil pastel onto your black sheet of paper. So one thing that you can do without needing any extra supplies is to, with a light colored oil pastel, something that complements, like this could pass for my canyony kind of color. It will blend in. Like I'm not going to use, this was a canyon that has lots of reds and browns and oranges. I'm not going to use like blue to do this because the outlines will, it'll be on there in oil pastel. It's not the end of the world, but I don't know. I like to think through those choices. So you're gonna go ahead and coat the back of your drawing in oil pastel. You don't have to be like super duper thick, but you do wanna coat everything where there's important information. And then you're gonna go ahead and flip it over onto the black paper. I recommend taping it only because if you miss some spots, it's gonna be near impossible to line it back up. So if I tape it down, I could just lift this up to check it, okay? I guess it would help if I taped it down where you could see. And then I'm going to take my pen, and I happen to have a pink ballpoint pen right here, and I'm going to trace the key lines from my sketch. So I'm not tracing shading, I am tracing the line work. So like where this river curls back behind here. Where this back cliff kind of meets the horizon line. We've got some trees up here. It's getting that key information onto my page so that way as I'm adding the oil pastel, I can focus on my blending and I'm not as stressed about the shapes that I'm adding. Oh, and some of these lines I accidentally traced ones like this overlap, so this line wasn't supposed to be here. And that's okay, because I can color over that with my oil pastels. But I definitely would recommend kind of figuring that out before you start transferring. And then you flip it back and it's all on your black paper and it's already in oil pastel. So anywhere that you applied that pressure, it pushed the oil pastel onto the black paper. So it's a super easy transfer idea if you're having trouble getting it. And then you would go in here, you know, with your colors and start to kind of build up your shading, but you've got that key information in there. And then all it is layering in your colors, remembering to blend, remembering to look at your photo, look at where it's dark, look at where it's light. You know, where should you add some opposite colors to enhance your shadows? Where should you put in some white? Do you need to put the white down first so that it the colors look a little bit different? Because it's going to look a little different if you put the white first or if you put the white on top. And so a lot of it is just experimenting, but we're just definitely, you could start filling in your, you know, colors there. So hopefully that helps. Thanks so much.